hit like and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School, where we break down the most controversial topics, the most engaged debates, the most interesting subjects going on in the world today. And tonight is no different. We got stuff that we need to talk about, from domestic to foreign, and we have a very special guest, and I want to not waste any time getting us right to the subject at hand. By the way, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, also drop in your name, your city, even your country that you're writing in from. After all, we are, in fact, a global classroom, so make sure you do that. In the meantime, I want to talk to you all about a very important thing, and that is the Flotilla to Gaza. That's right. The global Samud Flotilla has set sail. It set sail from Tunisia, and it is heading straight to Gaza, and it's holding food and aid in defiance of Israel's blockade. This comes just days after 2 of its ships were hit by drone strikes while still docked in Tunisian ports. No one was hurt in the attacks, but the message was clear. Someone wants to stop this convoy, clearly. Organizers, though, they say that they are undeterred. Now, the flotilla itself is named Samud, which is Arabic for steadfastness. It is one of the boldest challenges yet to Israel's siege. It comes as the UN warns that more than 500,000 Palestinians in Gaza are facing catastrophic hunger, with human rights groups around the world calling this unequivocally a genocide. Volunteers from more than 40 countries are on board, including climate activist Greta Thunberg, Liam Cunningham, the actor, of course, Barcelona's former mayor Ada Colau, and even members of the European Parliament. Italy says that nearly 60 of its citizens are participating, and its foreign minister warned Israel to respect their rights. Israel has a history, as you know, of intercepting or even attacking these aid ships when they hit international water. So this is not a veiled threat, nor is it an empty concern. The world is watching, and they want to see if this convoy can make it through, or if more violence is going to meet activists who are trying to simply deliver bread and not bombs. Joining me now is Greg Stoker. He is the media lead for the Veterans Boat part of the Flotilla to Gaza. Greg, so good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's about 3:30 a.m. here off the coast of Tunisia, and we are heading, towards Benghazi, where we're going to hit like gale force winds in 5 days, and no one's really looking forward to that. But yeah, as you said, we're going to continue right along until, we get into about 150 miles off the coast of Gaza, when we expect to be interdicted or perhaps assailed international waters by the Israeli Navy.
So explain to me what's happening here. I know where you are geographically. You've broken that down for us quite perfectly. What's the goal of the mission, and why are you a part of it?
Okay, so the goal of the mission is quite clearly stated. We are attempting to break the illegal siege of Gaza and deliver aid and establish a humanitarian corridor into a population of people facing existential annihilation as a matter of state policy in Gaza. As we can see now, the assault on Gaza City has begun. It's not, as a military analyst, it's not what you would consider a military operation. They're basically just bombing all of the last large-scale high-rises that house large family complexes to basically permanently displace everybody. And, this internal displacement from one place to another, in combination with famine, a relentless bombing campaign, a lack of medical aid, is basically one of the easiest way to, or most effective ways to carry out a genocide without your soldiers actually having to, fire bullets. So, but that is a separate topic, which they do as well. But no, we are simply here to try and run the blockade, or at least bring attention and spread awareness to what they're doing. Their continued flagrant violation of any sort of international law. And because of this, we also want to bring to the world's attention that the entire world over the past year, in terms from a global security standpoint, has become irrevocably less safe.
So there seem to be two missions here. One is the actual delivery of aid, and then the other thing is drawing attention to these gross transgressions of international law, human rights conventions, etc. In both cases, the question is, what would a success look like?
Well, there are many different forms of success. I think it's already kind of been successful insofar as, we have drawn attention to the matter. We've been trying to wage an existential information war for the survival of the Palestinians in Gaza for the past 2 years. And the flotilla itself is not something that Israel in its bad PR position can really deal with rhetorically. What we're doing right now is an action protected under international law. I know neoliberal pundits like Piers Morgan have a weird obsession with calling this, performative activism. But basically, what are the three foundations of like social change? It's agitation, education, and organization. So as long as people are talking about it, they're not understanding why this is actually more than just performative, because then we can educate them about hey, we are doing something that's protected under international law. And if that still means something, and if you think that keeps the world in general, in terms of like great power politics, more safe, then maybe you should ask yourself, why is Israel blocking us and not us, just coming from the position where we need to be blocked to deliver aid? That's one of the things. But, I think some of the success we've already experienced is the amount of resources they have actually, and this hasn't been widely reported on, allocated to actually stopping this. So there are basically 4 different phases of this operation. There's or 4 different avenues of attack. So right now we have been trying to get the flotilla together. We have no military infrastructure. This thing was started to be put together in June because there isn't a lot of time. Sailing season in the Mediterranean is over September 15th. It is now September 15th, which is why we're about to get hit by a gale in a few days. This is generally not when people sail the Mediterranean, but there is no other time. So this was put together in a hurry, completely self-funded. I did a grassroots campaign to fly a bunch of veterans out, put them on the boat, and kind of leverage our social and cultural capital in our militarized society to kind of serve as a information operations piece. But we don't have any military infrastructure. This is a completely humanitarian mission. We don't have a tax base with which to allocate funds for large-scale naval contingencies. So we were supposed to launch about 2 weeks ago. I said from the beginning that this was going to take longer because Israel, especially in Spain and Tunisia, has been waging bureaucratic warfare to stop the flotilla from even happening. So pressuring local officials, local governments, trying to get pressure governments to pull flags from different ships, because if your ship is flagless, can't really sail in international waters. As we know, they tried to launch from Turkey earlier this year. That fell apart because they successfully pressured the government of Guinea-Bissau, I believe, to pull the flag. So they were trying to do that with a lot of different ships, close down the harbor for code violations, pull ships' insurance. It didn't work. So we've passed the bureaucratic warfare stage. And what we're about to get into now is the psychological operations stage. So since that didn't work, they were kind of waiting for this whole thing to implode, again, because they don't have a lot of ways to rhetorically deal with it in terms of their Hasbara. So now what we're going to see, or what I anticipate seeing, is an escalation of psychological operations. So, we saw Ben-Gvir, which I really don't place a lot of stock in. He says a bunch of out-of-pocket stuff all the time, that that they're clearing out long-term terror prisons for us to all go into. So that's like activists from 44 different countries, large personalities like Greta Thunberg, a boat full of U.S. combat veterans that I'm currently on and media lead for, all into these prisons. I don't think it's politically viable, but they want to deter this from ever happening again, while at the same time not wanting a repeat of the 2010 Mavi Marmara, which 10 activists were killed and 50 were wounded.
Let me pause for a second, just because I want to give some people who are watching a little more background. Many people who do know you for your activism. They know you for your deep critiques of American imperialism. They know you for your anti-Zionist politics. You've been on the front line speaking very, very powerful and important truths. Some people don't know that you're also a former military person. You're an Army vet. Talk to me about the influence of your experience in the military and the armed forces on sort of how you experience and how you understand what's happening in Gaza, and also the role that former armed forces members are playing in this particular flotilla.
Yeah. Again, I think that's a great question. It kind of speaks to why we're here in the first place. So kind of, yes, I could look at this from an objective, like military analysis perspective. But for me, I was radicalized into the radical left-wing position of being anti-interventionist during Obama's presidency. So I did 4 combat deployments in the 75th Ranger Regiment, which is a U.S. Special Operations Unit. I was in tactical operations centers watching the Obama's drone strike policy carried out in real time. And there just really wasn't a standard of proof for like who we were striking. Should we be striking these people? Also, there was kind of this operational quota that we had to do. So that was basically like going after these high value targets. And we didn't really have a lot of intelligence collection to be going after like Al-Qaeda operatives and, proto-Islamic State guys in like 2012, 2013, 2014. So they're just like, well, you got to go out and do operations. So if you don't know known targets, you hit likely and you hit suspected. And a lot of these things were just completely innocent compounds. What were we doing there? It was horrible and absolutely embarrassing. And it reminds me of ICE, tying it back to there is no difference between the police state and the war state. We've seen the militarization of the police really ramp up since the Vietnam War. And it's not this like linear progression of like steady militarization. There are times of moral panic when the police are militarized for political reasons. That happened during 9/11. It's now happening with the immigrant crisis. And one of the reasons we wanted to be a part of this flotilla and our messaging is to basically explain to people how, whatever we do overseas, whatever kind of, excuse me, it's 3 a.m.
Absolutely. Catch your breath for a minute. And y'all, again, I want to be clear. He's on a flotilla. This man is in North Africa. He's leaving Tunis. He's out. It's late. It's dangerous, and he's still here sharing time and analysis with us. So just again, Greg, I want to thank you. But finish your thought there.
Yeah. So basically, American voters are really complacent, or American citizens are really complacent when it comes to foreign policy, especially with, the war footing aspect of our great nation. So there's this idea that it's kind of been normalized through the global war on terror, that we're always engaged in these conflicts. It's the Middle East, more properly called West Asia, that there's always a war there. There's always conflict. So what are we going to do about it? How does it affect us? It can feel really overwhelming that, all this activism went into trying to stop the Iraq war. We were in Afghanistan for 20 years. Now another thing's kicked off. And I think a lot of people, it's normalized, and it needs to not be, because if you accept the premise that fascism is on the rise, with the deploying of the National Guard and the seizing of Union Station in Washington, D.C., to kind of build Trump's little fortress of like power in the country's capital. Well, there's no way to not connect it to the war state. And whatever types of violence and repression that we employ overseas is almost immediately used back upon our own citizenry. I mean, I think this idea was first pioneered by M.S. Césaire, back in the day, and then kind of expanded upon by other academics. But I think like Palestine's kind of like the front line of this, because it's so easily demonstrable that, the same mechanisms that enforce, through spyware and technology and policing techniques and predictive policing models that enforce occupation and apartheid in the West Bank and Gaza, is that literally at a police department near you. ICE just signed a contract with Paragon, which is an Israeli spyware firm, for their graphite technology. It's not as invasive as people think, but it can still break through all your encrypted apps and, turn your phone's recording device into an active listening device if you have any sort of cell service or Wi-Fi access.
Jesus, that's scary.
Yeah, it is. And as we know, that ICE is already extrajudicially compiling lists of people who criticize ICE. It's all part of the same system and policy that's like actually trying to withdraw passports from U.S. citizens that, are critical of Charlie Kirk and, his assassination, or, critical of ICE or critical of Israel. So it's all part of this like authoritarian crackdown. And if, I do think it's simple for people just kind of getting into these ideas that, fascism is really imperialism turned inward on its own population. So we don't no longer have the power projection to like have a 20-year occupational war in Afghanistan or go to war with Iran or fight China over the state of Taiwan. But we can still wage a forever war because the war machine still needs to be fed. We can just now do it on our own people. And if you kind of recognize this, well,
let me push you on that. What role does the war machine play specifically in Gaza? Because there are people who say, okay, we understand Afghanistan, we understand Iraq because of how the U.S. is sort of shaping that battle. But how does a genocide in Gaza help a military interest or military industrial complex, what have you?
Okay. So this is, I often talk about this. A lot of people see like weapons going to Israel as the military industrial complex really profiting.
Right.
But that's actually kind of small change for the MIC. How they make most of their money is on these like long-term, high payout research and development projects, like the F-35 project that just keep getting funded and funded and funded for over a decade. But it doesn't really serve it like linearly. It's a means to an end to serve the same people that sit on both the boards of like BlackRock and General Dynamics, because what this really is a real estate land grab. They say it out loud. Like when policymakers actually say what they want to do, maybe we should start listening to them. Trump has this, even before he came into office, there was this massive push for a Gaza 2035 project. The Jerusalem Post reported on it quite a few years ago. Trump is a real estate developer. Steve Witkoff, the special envoy to the Middle East, is a real estate developer. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, in conjunction with the Saudis and the UAE, is also looking to develop Gaza. There's a bunch of unexploited natural gas in the Gaza Marine Basin. Also, there's the opportunity in a few decades to create like a rival to the Suez Canal coming up out of the north of Gaza as well. Just like the war in Iraq didn't necessarily linearly serve the military-industrial complex. It's all the same. It's about resource extraction and carving up West Asia into kind of like vassal states that will allow like Western capitalists to exploit their people and resources. And the military and industrial complex is one of the main ways that we assert violent imperialism. So
that's a great analysis. Talk to me about who's on the flotilla. Not to get, I don't want to become superficial here, but I think there are people who want to know exactly who's on here. Of course, we know you're there. We know Greta Thunberg is there. Some big names. How did you get those people involved, and what was that like logistically?
Okay, so I came into this late. I was one of my colleagues who's a member of About Face, which is About Face is an NGO. It's Veterans Against the War. Kind of got a line on the flotilla, and I was like, hey, you know what? I might insert myself in there and fundraise to get a veterans boat in there to kind of, again, use our position in society to kind of spread this message. Hey, American voters, you should care about violent foreign policy if you care about violent domestic policy, because they're two wings of the same bird. So I got on pretty late, but this all happened really fast over the past couple months. And so who's on the flotilla? Obviously, Greta Thunberg. I will say that Liam Cunningham, he's not. He actually told me he had like a filming event that he was contractually obligated to go to, but he did a lot of help and did a lot of media coverage for us before he had to leave. A bunch of different journalists, some internet personalities as well. I'm not sure, like, in some MPs, but it's been a huge rush, and I've been bogged down with like admin and logistical stuff. So I really only have been focusing on getting this boat up and running in terms of having it be viable.
Dude, that's a full-time job. What's the energy like? I mean, are people afraid? Are they anxious? Are they nervous? I mean, you're going into a very one of the most contested pieces of the world at one of the most intense times in modern history. I mean, what are people thinking? What are people feeling?
I am so personally, I'm so pissed and exhausted that this trying to get out of port has turned in from a 1 week timeline to a 3 week timeline. So I'm just ready to get out, and I'm glad we're finally sailing. I think the nervousness for most people, and I believe most people feel the same way. We did not expect to be, that level of bureaucratic warfare keeping us in port for that long. So everyone's just happy we launched finally. We got about 14 days sail to Gaza. We're going to hit a gale, I said, off the coast of Benghazi in a few days. No one's looking forward to that. But I don't think for a lot of people it's really sunk in how gnarly the psychological operations are going to get. I kind of have a background in that and like human intelligence collection and stuff. And the threats are going to get bad. I am in the threat assessment I wrote up for the flotilla, like psychological operations were a big part of it, because that's how they're going to try to divide us and get ships captains to abandon the mission. And once one ship captains go, it could create like a cascade failure effect. We should be operating under the premise, here we go again, that they're going to do to like organizers like myself or ships captains to like what they do to journalists in Gaza, where they have like someone from their intelligence section find their number, call them on WhatsApp, make threats, try to get them to lose their resolve. We expect doxing, the addresses of our family members, our address, our personal information to get doxed. Drone warfare, not just in terms of like actually being attacked by drones, but the Israeli Air Force keeps drones in holding patterns, really close holding patterns over Gaza, so you can't sleep. We expect that as we get closer within drone range from the Israeli Air Force bases. So we definitely, and we expect threats for long-term prison detentions. But, we've put support groups in place to help pressure representatives to actually push for, us to be released, because this is actually not even a civil offense. It's definitely not a criminal offense. It's not even a civil offense, according to international law. So we're just going to keep going, and we're going to do what we're going to do, and they're going to do what they're going to do. And I guess the global forum and the Congress of Nations will have to be the judge of the events.
Using your analysis, drawing from your experiences and seeing what you're seeing in person, how do you think this thing ends? Right, this can't go on forever. Something's got to give. What do you think gives and when?
Well, the problem is they have unconditional support from the dying unipolar power, which is the United States. A lot of people did expect their economy to be less resilient than it has been, but even now, over the past couple of days, Netanyahu has said, that Israel is becoming more isolated. Their tech sector, which is seen as the economic engine of the Israeli state, is suffering because a lot of these reservists, that even 60,000 of them, which were pulled up for this Gaza assault, which is just an ethnic cleansing operation, a lot of like almost half of them work in the tech sector. So their economic engine is being irrevocably affected by this. Also, they're being slowly isolated day after day, boycott after boycott. Now there's some controversy about them being denied from Eurovision and kind of losing their access to the European cultural space. That would be devastating. I think I don't like making predictions about this, but I kind of ask you a question. They've created this multi-generational edifice of propaganda about them being the Middle East only democracy. They've art washed, their entire bloody state's existence, by film festivals and, being seen as like a liberal democracy. How do they regain that image? And how do they ever go back to not being boycotted by the majority of the world?
I'm not convinced that it's possible. And that's my fear in some ways. It's my hope and my optimism on the one hand that things will never go back to the way they were. I remember working at CNN years ago, And we wouldn't even show a headline of Palestinians being killed half the time. You know, when I think about Operation Cast Lead or Protective Edge, I mean, the narration was so different than it is right now. Even 2 years ago, the way we talked about this was very different. I think the world sees what's happening. They see Netanyahu's actions as outside the boundaries of basic decency and governance. My concern, though, is that things are so awful that they will be able to frame this as an outlier, that they will be able to say Netanyahu was the problem. This was the problem when we had bad leadership. He's our Trump. And so we need to get back to good old-fashioned, middle-of-the-road, centrist Zionism, liberal Zionism, the same thing that had Israelis marching in the streets a month before October 7th, when they were just marching to fight Netanyahu's assault on the judiciary. I feel like there will be people who will want those days again, and that will be the way of giving Israel cover for what is really a century of war crimes, but will be framed as a really bad stretch of Netanyahu.
Right. The one thing that I would kind of add to that is we have to take into account, like, what are America's views of this. I think most people on what's traditionally the left, I don't really consider the Democratic Party to be a left-wing party.
Because it's not.
Yeah, I'll just say that diplomatically. You know, a lot of people are horrified across the political spectrum. You know, a lot of people on the right are kind of seeing this, you know, this America First promise not being followed through on by the administration. And I think Israel-Palestine is kind of the most out there example of that. So, yeah, we now can criticize the United States, but Marco Rubio and Brian Mast, who's on the Senate Foreign Affairs the Foreign Affairs Committee, is saying they're going to revoke your passports if you say something mean about Israel. And a lot of people have issues with that. You know, one of the big things, the big problems that they have and that they won't be able to recover from is, you know, the citizens of the empire that from which they draw their existence, you know, both economically, militarily, politically, through political and diplomatic cover, is gone. Like it's kind of the beginning of the end. Again, you know, both people on the left and the right want to see a lessening of U.S. Interventionism and adventurism across the world, and kind of Israel's the biggest typification of that. So I think this begins and ends with the U.S. empire, and you know, as the material conditions continue,
that does not encourage me, sir. I think you're right, but that's terrifying.
Yeah, as the material conditions continue to degrade in America, I think support for Israel is going to dry up. Just because, like, hey, I can never buy a house, and maybe some people might start connecting, you know, the fact that you'll never going to, you know, be able to afford a home because Blackstone has bought up 60,000, new single-family homes in the United States, and they also have, you know, reconstruction contracts for Gaza. Maybe American people can be like, hey, this is all part of the same system. The reason I can't buy a house or make rent is the same reason that the population of Gaza needs to be annihilated for real estate interests and land.
We have a comment coming in here from Cello Man who says, you're making us vets proud. Float on. I wanted to read that because I do think it's important that you understand or are reminded of the fact that you're working against the grain here, that you're doing incredibly important work, and you're not just speaking for people who are sort of vocally in support of you. You're speaking for a lot of people who are silently trying to figure this out. You're speaking for people who are advocating within their relative sites of labor, but have to be tactical so they can maintain a living wage. You're speaking for people who've had enough of empire and imperialism. You're speaking for people who've had enough of this vicious occupation. You're speaking for so many people, and the fact that you were able to jump on that boat, and that you're willing to go to Gaza and you're willing to stare the government and the global community in the face and say, hey, enough. We demand justice right now. Man, it's a testament to your not just your character, but your extraordinary commitment to this issue, and just how powerful and impactful you've been in your activism, man. We are so grateful for you. We love you, Greg. We're grateful for you. And I wish you nothing but peace and safety on that flotilla.
All right. Well, yeah, I really appreciate that, y'all. Thanks for having me on. Probably gonna try to my night watch shift is starting here in a couple minutes. Currently, we're off Tunisia, and it's going to be about 14 days before it really goes down. So be looking out, and we would appreciate your support when we get engaged and interdicted by the Israeli Navy.
My brother, I have you back. Whatever you need, I got you. Also, there are a lot of people, there are thousands of people watching right now who also have your back, and they will reach out, or you'll reach out to them, and you'll find out how to build community and how to get the support you need. I want to make sure that you're successful. I want to make sure every single one of you returns home, and I want to make sure, of course, that we see a free Palestine.
All right, yeah, free Palestine, absolutely. It's kind of the linchpin of all these different struggles. So thanks you so much for having me on, y'all, and hope to see you soon.
Talk soon, brother. Everybody, that was Greg Stoker. We stand in, Pamela Jones, I agree with you. We stand in solidarity with Greg as he's on that flotilla to Gaza with Greta Thunberg and about 40 other people, all of whom are fighting not just to get supplies and aids into Gaza, but to put a spotlight on the difficulties and the challenges that it takes to get aid in to Gaza. So just wanted to make sure we covered that. We got another story that I've been wanting to talk to you all about. Tonight, multiple HBCUs, including Alabama State, Virginia State, Hampton, Southern University, Clark Atlanta University, Spelman, and Bethune-Cookman, were forced into lockdowns after receiving threats that federal authorities now believe are hoaxes. The FBI says that there's no sign of a credible danger. However, students, faculty, and families had their lives disrupted. They had their classes canceled. They had their campuses shut down. This has been a big deal. The Congressional Black Caucus blasted the incidents as vile and, quote, a chilling reminder of the relentless racism and extremism that continues to target Black communities. Now, this wave of threats comes just one day after conservative activist Charlie Kirk was assassinated on stage at Utah Valley University. Mind you, Kirk was killed in one of the whitest states in America, on one of the whitest campuses in America. And all the suspects have been white and male. Civil rights leader Reverend Al Sharpton connected those dots for us, condemning both the shooting and the targeting of HBCUs, calling for an end to political violence across the board. He also announced he's adding more security after referencing past attacks on Edward Waters University, where I spoke at graduation one day, and Tuskegee. Officials haven't linked the HBCU threats to Kirk's killing, but the timing has campus leaders and students on edge. For now, police and the FBI are urging vigilance, while Black colleges brace themselves for what feels like an old playbook of racial terror that's simply been updated for the current political moment. All right, so we got one more story before we go that I want to talk to you all about, just because I do. All right, y'all ready? David Ellison might be building the biggest media empire of our time. The 41-year-old CEO of the newly minted Paramount Skydance. That's right. He's working with bankers on a bid to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. That's the home of DC Comics, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, and March Madness. Don't sleep. If it goes through, Paramount's lineup, Star Trek, Mission Impossible, Sonic, UFC fights, it would fuse with Warner's deep vault of superheroes, fantasy blockbusters, legacy cartoons, and of course live sports rights. That would instantly make Ellison a kingmaker, able to rival Netflix, Disney, ESPN in streaming, but also in theater and in live sports. Can you believe it? This isn't just about Hollywood mergers, although I'm tired of seeing Hollywood mergers. There's like 3 companies left. It's about state TV vibes. If Paramount Skydance absorbs WBD, we're talking about a few less or a few fewer theatrical releases, fewer independent projects, and more corporate propaganda dressed up as content. That would also mean the end of CBS's legacy of serious journalism. Goodbye to the honesty and the integrity of 60 Minutes, and hello to a new Fox News with a slicker production value. So I guess this means CBS to use the technical terms, CBS is cooked between gutting late night, bribing Trump, and now plotting to swallow Warner Brothers Discovery. Skydance is basically building Fox News or Newsmax for the, how do you young people say it? The young hip genocide fan. It's another day at WTF. I don't understand what's happening in the world. I get confused easy. This makes my brain hurt. Anyway, great news. Good to talk to you all. I will see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching Night School. We'll be back tomorrow on Tuesday at 10:30.